The morning my hearing snapped back like a switch, I didn't tell my daughter. I wanted to know who she was when she thought I was living underwater. The first thing she said, when she believed I couldn't catch a word, was how to move me out by Christmas and sell my house by spring. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. It was Tuesday, October 28, 2025, Indianapolis North Side, Broad Ripple, the little yellow bungalow Mary and I paid off the year she died. At 10:40 a.m., the audiologist in Carmel slid a typed report across the counter. 3 pages, my name spelled right for once. "You've got most of it back, Mr. Hale," she said, tapping a neat graph like a skyline. "Give your brain a week to relearn sounds." I folded the printout and tucked it into the inside pocket of my flannel. The door shut behind me, and the world hissed alive, tires on wet leaves, a delivery truck's reverse beep, my own breath. I stood by the car and made a decision I didn't say out loud. Tell no one. Not yet. Not even Emily. That evening, my kitchen smelled like onions and cumin. Emily had her tote on the chair like she owned the place. Phone face up on the counter, speaker on. Tyler's voice tinnier than a bad old radio. "Maple Court has a December move-in," he said. "If we list the bungalow mid-January, we'll catch the early buyers." Emily's knife thumped the cutting board. "Dad won't notice. The cards are already set to auto. He thinks the internet is a toaster." I stirred the stew so I wouldn't have to steady myself on the counter. 4 months of near-deafness had dulled me. Now every sound had edges. The kettle's whisper, the tick under the stove where a mouse likes to dream. And my daughter's words, sharp as roofing nails. She reached around me, performative patience, over the hard of hearing, and nudged my laptop open with a knuckle. "Daddy, you know I'll handle the bills." Sweet as a bandage being ripped off. The screen flashed my Speedway Credit Union login, and I kept my face calm, mouth a grateful "thank you," like always. On the corner by the coffee maker, a scrap of paper peeped out from under a grocery flyer. I palmed it. A cash receipt, torn ragged along the top, stamped crooked. Roofing deposit, 2800, 1103, paid cash, name scribble, H. Lee. Maybe Hale. Maybe not. I slid the slip into my shirt pocket where the audiology report already warmed. My fingers trembled once, and then stilled. This house, our house, was my retirement. Every receipt was a rung on the ladder I climbed out of grief. I watched her walk to the hall and hang her keys, mine among them. That old brass cut with the tiny scratch across the bow from when Mary dropped it on the driveway in '09. It winked under the light like a coin. "Ty," she said, half-whisper, too confident. "If we can get Dad into Maple Court before New Year's, we stage the bungalow as is. Roof's already in motion. The ER bill scared him this summer. He'll sign what I put in front of him." I set a spoon carefully on the stove so it wouldn't clatter and give me away. The spoon still clicked and my heart did too. "You cooking, Dad?" Emily asked loudly, as if volume were care. "Trying," I said, letting my voice drift. She softened, the way a person does when they think they're winning. "We'll take care of everything." I nodded, and in the nod I wrote a plan. Listen longer, learn their schedule, change the locks, prove intent without a fight. The deadbolt stuck when I turned it that night, old wood swollen with the damp. Plans do that, I thought. They swell in bad weather. I pressed my palm against the door and felt the grain like a pulse. And I promised the house and Mary's photo on the mantel, the same quiet oath. I can hear you now. The next morning, October 29th, the world felt too loud. Every faucet drip, every creak of the radiator scraped at my nerves like metal on metal. I walked to St. Luke's Chapel on Meridian, small, warm, with sun slicing through stained glass, and sat in the same pew I'd chosen the week Mary was buried. The silence I used to know had been kind. This new silence, punctured by whispers and the faint buzz of fluorescent bulbs, felt cruel. I pulled out the funeral program I kept folded in my jacket pocket, the one with Mary's smile printed next to the hymn, "Abide with me." The paper had gone soft from years of handling. I thought about how, after my fall from the ladder last spring, when my hearing dulled to cotton, Emily had stepped in without asking. "Let me take care of things," she'd said. I'd let her. That phrase, once comforting, now curdled in my ears. That night, she showed up again, brisk and cheerful, like she was punching a clock. She set her tote on the counter, dumped out plastic meal containers, and opened my laptop before I could even greet her. "You know I'll handle the bills, Dad," she said, slow and loud, as if I was still deaf. She exaggerated every word, her mouth moving like a TV host's. I smiled the same tired smile I'd been practicing since Mary's death. "Thank you, sweetheart." She typed fast, too fast, switching tabs from my bank to utilities to credit cards. I saw numbers flicker, balances, transfers, scheduled payments. I caught one label in the corner of the screen, Zelle transfer $2,700. The mouse clicked. Gone. When she left, I sat in the glow of the laptop screen, my reflection a ghost in the glass. I whispered, "Who are you when you think no one's listening?" On November 1st, I went to Speedway Credit Union in person. I told the teller, a kind woman named Rosa, that I needed to review my recent activity. She tapped her keyboard, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Hale, there have been 3 transfers in the last 3 months. 4,000 in August, 2,700 in September, 2,500 in October." I gripped the counter to steady myself. "Each one." "Same recipient," she said softly. "Emily Sutter." For a moment, all I heard was the hum of the bank's printer, chewing paper. Like it was eating my past, I took the statements home, spread them across my kitchen table. The wood grain beneath them looked like veins, pulsing. My pension hit every third of the month, $3,140. By the 5th, most of it was gone. Labeled family support. The old house smelled like soup from last night. My spoon from dinner still rested on the stove, exactly where I'd left it. Every corner of the room, every object, felt complicit. The collapse came slow, like the roof sinking under snow. I sat down in Mary's old chair and felt the frame groan. Tears found their way without permission. I wasn't crying over the money. I was crying over trust, over how quietly it can rot. When I could breathe again, I grabbed a pen and a yellow notepad. I wrote 3 lines: revoke access, change locks, prove intent. Each word steadied my hand. On Sunday, Pastor Jim invited me over for coffee. He lived across the alley, retired postal worker, widowed like me. His house smelled like pine cleaner and cinnamon. I told him pieces of what I'd learned. He didn't ask for more, just listened. Then he tapped the side of his door frame. "I got one of those new Ring cameras. You can borrow it. Extra battery, too." That clink of his coffee cup on the table, it sounded like a bell calling me back to life. That night, I started my first test. I placed my old flip phone in a cookie jar on the counter, recording. When Emily dropped by the next morning to check in, she hummed to herself while making tea. Then her voice turned sharp, talking on her phone to Tyler. His ER bill. "It from July scared him," she said. "He'll sign anything if I remind him of that." The spoon in my hand trembled. My hearing might have been gone for months, but I could finally listen again, and this time I'd make sure every sound meant something. November 5th, a chill morning in Indianapolis. The frost on my porch steps glittered like crushed glass. I pedaled my old Schwinn down to Sandra Rick's office, the CPA who'd handled our taxes since Mary and I were still filing joint returns. Her office sat above a dry cleaner with a green banker's lamp and a Cubs calendar stuck on July. When I told her what I'd overheard, Sandra didn't flinch. She reached for her red flare pen and circled numbers on my printed statements. "These aren't random," she said. They follow your pension. Third in, fifth out. Classic dependency creep. She used words like patent withdrawals, financial, control, fiduciary breach. I just saw my daughter's name repeated in ink. Sandra laid the paper flat. You need to separate your funds and start a record of your own. That hit something deep. Record. That word had purpose again. She pulled out a yellow legal pad. Together, we listed what I already knew. Pension hits every third, Zelle pulls on the 5th. Roofing deposit, $2,800 cash on November 3rd. ER bill from July 12th. Used to scare me about medical costs. Then she gave me my first mission. Don't confront her yet. Quietly replace convenience with proof. On my way home, I stopped at a diner on 52nd, where Sandra said I might find a private investigator she trusted. A quiet Korean fellow named Devin Cho. He was already at a booth when I arrived, eating pancakes at 3 in the afternoon. Rix called, he said without looking up. You're the hearing guy. I guess that's me. He slid over a small black notebook. Forget drama, get timestamps. We planned the layout like blueprints. Ring camera from Pastor Jim by November 8th. A decoy envelope labeled Maple. Cord intake forms to tempt curiosity. Keep phone on record mode during any visit. People reveal themselves when they think no one's documenting them, Devin said, cutting his pancakes in perfect squares. You'll need an attorney. Eventually, elder law. He wrote down a name. Quinn Bell. November 10th. I sat in Quinn's downtown office, surrounded by thick folders labeled trust revocations and guardianship challenges. She looked barely 40, but spoke like she'd already fought every battle twice. We'll start small, she said. A limited power of attorney revocation, prepped for notarization in December. And a bank freeze letter ready for delivery on your signal. Her pen moved fast. This part's important. Don't change your routine. Let them believe you're still dependent. That gives you invisibility. I nodded. I can do quiet. Before I left, I signed a retainer check. $500 memo line, retirement protection. That night, I walked through the grocery aisle at Kroger, picking up a case of sparkling apple cider. The kind Mary used to insist on for Christmas dinner. The receipt read $24.96, date stamped 11/10/2025, 7:42 p.m. I folded it into a wine bag and wrote in thick black marker, Tyler, do not open until dinner. A prop, a clue, a warning wrapped in politeness. On November 12th, Pastor Jim printed, place cards for the church's annual Christmas turkey dinner, December 22nd, Fellowship Hall. He handed me the list. Want me to seat Emily and Tyler across from you? Perfect, I said, pocketing the seating chart like a blueprint for justice. That evening, I left the chart spread open on my kitchen counter, just visible enough for Emily to accidentally see it when she next dropped by. When the house went quiet, I stood by the oven timer, pressing start and letting it tick down from 5 minutes, matching my breath to its rhythm. Control returning in clicks and dings. This time, I wasn't the deaf old man at their mercy. I was the man learning to hear again, every word, every motive, every lie, and to file each sound where it belonged, under evidence. November 12th came cold and clear, the kind of morning where the air smells like pennies and wood smoke. I wore my brown corduroy jacket, the one with Mary's old grocery list still tucked in the inside pocket, and headed straight to Speedway Credit Union. The branch manager, Ms. Ortega, greeted me with her usual patient smile. Mr. Hale, back. Again? Not just for coffee this time, I said, handing her Attorney Bell's letter. I'd like to restrict all external transfers from my accounts, effective immediately. She skimmed the document, her brow tightening. Then she stamped it hard. Received 11/12/2025, 10:22 a.m. That sound rubber meeting paper felt like a door slamming shut on their scheme. Would you like a printout of recent teller interactions? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Every note. Since August. 10 minutes later, she handed me 2 yellow carbon copies. 5. Daughter present, advising customer on Zelle setup. 10 to 4. Daughter initiated transfer. Customer nodded. I didn't nod at anything. I just didn't hear. I moved $75,000, most of my savings, into a new account only I could access. Then I ordered paper statements for everything. No more digital. Loopholes. No more helpful logins. Ms. Ortega printed a freeze confirmation and gave a small nod that said she understood without judgment. By that afternoon, Devon had arrived in his rusty Subaru with the ring camera from Pastor Jim. We tested it twice. "Battery's good for 72 hours, he said. "You'll know every door knock, every visit." "November 15th, Sandra called. "Got your reconciliation done," she said, voice crackling through the phone. "It's worse than we thought. $9,200. Diverted since summer. All roads lead to your daughter's brokerage account and her husband's gym vendor." I could almost hear her scribbling. "They're cash-strapped, Marty. Desperate people justify anything." "I'm not desperate," I said. "I'm deliberate." That night, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. The CPA's summary, the teller memos, and the stamped freeze notice. It looked like a crime scene of paperwork, each page a footprint leading to truth. The next step was psychological. Make them comfortable again. On November 18th, I called Emily. "Honey," I said, raising my voice just enough to sound unsure, "could you pick up some hearing aid batteries for me? The big pack? I can't read the numbers anymore." "Of course, Dad," she said, instantly soothed. "I'll grab them tomorrow." She dropped by with a grocery bag, humming the same tune as before. "These should last you months," she said, tossing the batteries onto the table like confetti. I smiled, thanked her, and noticed her eyes flick toward the mail. She gathered a few envelopes and slid them into her tote with the kind of muscle, memory you don't notice when you're guilty. By November 20th, I was testing my new tactic, silence as spotlight. I sat in the kitchen while the dryer buzzed behind me, letting her believe I couldn't hear a thing. My flip phone sat recording inside the cookie jar again. "The house is equity on legs," she said into her phone. "If we sell for $340 and pay Maple Court 6 months ahead, we're golden." My pulse was steady. This was no longer pain, it was data collection. After she left, I folded Pastor Jim's printed seating chart for the December 22nd dinner and slid it into a cookbook on the counter. That chart, those names, that date, it wasn't just a meal anymore. It was my stage. I stood at the sink, rinsing the last mug, and whispered to myself, "You taught me to listen, Emily. You just forgot that listening cuts both ways." Thanksgiving arrived on November 28th, under a sky the color of dull pewter. Indianapolis looked frozen in mid-breath. I drove to Emily's ranch house in Fishers with a pie I didn't bake and a calm I didn't trust. The minute I stepped inside, the smell of butter and sage mixed with expensive candles that tried too hard. Football murmured from the TV, laughter fluttered at the edges, and Tyler greeted me with that gym manager handshake, firm, shallow, rehearsed. "Dad," Emily said too brightly. "Sit wherever you like." Wherever I liked turned out to be, between a ceramic pilgrim and a bowl of green beans. I nodded and smiled like a man whose hearing still lagged 2 rooms behind. Every word, though, rang crisp inside my head. "Maple Court does holiday packages," Tyler said casually between bites. "Furnished units, easy move-in." I let my fork drop, the clink marking the line in my mental ledger. Later, while Emily refilled wine glasses, she whispered to her friend Kira, her voice low, but not low enough for the man she thought was deaf. "By December, we'll have Dad's place listed as is. I already spoke to the stager. He'll never notice." I stayed still behind the pantry door, my breath quiet as dust. When she left, I pulled out my phone and photographed the dry erase board on her fridge. Roof, 8K. Photos, $350. Staging, $600. At home that night, I logged everything into Devon's black notebook. Date, Nov 28. Location, Fishers. Witness, Kira. intent, sale without consent. December rolled in sharp and brittle. On the 2nd, the locksmith arrived, a polite kid with grease on his jeans. I paid $189 for new locks and kept the receipt pinned to the fridge. When he handed me the old brass key, I turned it in my fingers, feeling the history in its scratches. Then I buried it inside a drawer and slipped a fake spare into the garden gnome's hat out front. 3 days later, on December 5th, the ring cam caught exactly what I hoped it would. Emily stepping up to the door, trying the old key. The screen blinked, her hand twisting the knob, then her frustrated text pinged seconds later. Huh? Devin parked across the street in his rust-colored Subaru, camera in hand. He sent me the photo that night. Time-stamped 2:13 p.m. Her tote, bulging with what looked like my mail. Proof, frozen in pixels. On December 11th, Emily called with syrup in her voice. Dad, I found the cutest studio at Maple Court. Maple cabinets too. I'll help you pack after the church dinner, okay? After the dinner, I said, steady. Let's talk then. She laughed lightly, thinking she'd won. Perfect, Dad, you'll love it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table labeling a plain manila folder, apple cider. Inside went my CPA summary, the teller memos, the ring cam photo, and the freeze confirmation from Ms. Ortega. A bottle of harmless cider would share the same bag at the church hall. One sip for them, one truth for me. Outside, the first flakes started falling, thin as paper ash. I thought about Mary, how she used to say, "Snow's just heaven's way of showing footprints." I took a long look around my quiet bungalow, the steady tick of the heater, the soft blink of the ring cam light. Every sound was an ally now, every receipt a witness. The plan wasn't just working, it was tightening, one lawful knot at a time. By the time I turned off the lights, I whispered, "I hear everything now, and on December 22nd, so will everyone else." December 12th began with the sky the color of wet pewter and my resolve carved sharp. I was done preparing. It was time to move. At 9:01 a.m., I walked into Speedway Credit Union, carrying Attorney Bell's letter in a manila envelope. Ms. Ortega recognized me instantly. "Morning, Mr. Hale," she said. "Here to check balances?" "Here to close a chapter." She nodded and disappeared into the back. When she returned, she handed me a freeze confirmation printed on official letterhead, my safety in black. And white. I slipped one copy into my inside pocket and another into the wine bag labeled, "Tyler, do not open until dinner." My hand didn't shake once. Next stop, City Hall. The clerk's office smelled like toner and winter coats. The notary, a woman named Lisa, flipped through my revocation of prior power of attorney papers, checked my ID, and stamped them with a crisp thud. December 13th, 2025, 2:14 p.m. The sound was final, like the lid closing on a long-buried box. I took 2 certified copies, slid one into my coat, and texted Devin a single word. "Ready." That evening, Pastor Jim stopped by for coffee. I placed my phone on the table, screen up, and called Emily. "Honey, can you bring extra wine to the church dinner on the 22nd? "Of course," she chirped, unaware that every syllable was being recorded. "I'll even bring the Maple Court intake. Tyler already filled the caregiver part." Caregiver. That word rolled in my head like a marble in a tin cup. Proof she wasn't just scheming, she was documenting it. When I hung up, Pastor Jim gave me a slow nod. "You're close." Closer than she'll ever guess. The next few days blurred into quiet execution. Devin emailed screenshots of something unexpected on December 18th. Zillow drafts for listings under Hale Homes LLC, uploaded by Emily's work login. Photos of my own living room from 2019, reused without permission. He'd even captured the metadata line created Deck 17, 9:42 p.m. That same night, my voicemail blinked. It was the roofing contractor. "Hey, Mr. Hale, just confirming your daughter wanted to pause the roof work until ownership clarifies. I'll need your signature to restart. Give me a ring." Ownership clarifies. That phrase tasted like gunpowder. I saved the voicemail to my flash drive, labeled Evidence 04, and stared out my kitchen window where snow flurried against the glass. Everything was in motion now, the silent kind of storm that doesn't show itself until it's too late. I spent December 20th rehearsing, not words exactly, but timing. Standing in my kitchen, I lined up the cider bottles, the manila folder, and my phone. The oven timer became my cue, ticking down from 5 minutes. Click, breath, speak, pause, proof. When I finally said it aloud, the words settled into the air like judgment written in ink. Emily, I can hear you. The sentence felt heavier than any shout, honest as a prayer. I pictured it, Pastor Jim's fellowship hall glowing with soft lights, the seating chart already printed, Emily across from me, Tyler beside her, Kira and a few church friends scattered nearby. The bottle labeled Tyler in the middle of the table. I'd kept my silence for 56 days. Now I'd let it break like glass at a wedding, loud enough for everyone to turn, but too late for them to stop it. As I locked up for the night, I whispered to the quiet house, 2 more days, Mary, then they'll learn what it costs to mistake silence for weakness. The ring cam light blinked once, steady as a heartbeat, December 22nd. The city wore frost like lace, each car windshield painted in white. I pulled on my navy wool coat, the same one I'd worn to Mary's funeral, and slipped the apple cider folder and the wine bag into my leather satchel. My hands didn't tremble. That surprised me. Pastor Jim's fellowship hall smelled of turkey, pine candles, and floor polish. Folding chairs scraped against the tile, the buzz of chatter filled the space. It was the annual church dinner. My cover and my stage. Fairy lights strung along the ceiling made everything look softer than it deserved. At 6 sharp, Pastor Jim tapped a spoon to his glass. Friends, before we eat, a few words from our brother Marty Hale. My daughter smiled. Across the table, radiant and unsuspecting, Tyler raised his cider glass. I stood, the hum of the crowd dimming. Before we continue, I said lightly, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. A few chuckles rolled around the room. I always said, odd things since the accident, that was fine. It made what came next even cleaner. I raised my glass. A toast, I said, clear and steady. To family. And the truth you speak when you think the old man can't hear. A hush spread like spilled ink. Emily blinked. Dad? I reached into my satchel and pulled out a small stack of papers, the kind that make people sit up straighter. Let me tell you what I've been hearing these past 2 months. The first sheet hit the table, bank teller memos from September and October. I read aloud. Daughter present advising customer on Zelle setup. Daughter initiated transfer. Customer nodded. Tyler shifted in his seat. Kira's fork stopped mid-air. The next document, Sandra's CPA reconciliation report, circled in. Read. $9,200, I said. Transferred from my pension account to yours, Emily, hidden as family support. Clever, but not clever enough. Her voice went high and small. Dad, that's... I laid down the next. Paper, Zillow printouts labeled Hale Homes, LLC. You listed my house before I was even dead. Photos from 2019. My couch, Mary's quilt, the lamp we bought at Broad Ripple Market. Metadata stamped December 17th, 9:42 p.m. A low murmur rippled through the tables. Pastor Jim stood quietly behind me, one hand resting on my shoulder, not to steady me but to bear witness. Here's my favorite, I said, pulling the still image from Devin's camera. It showed Emily at my door, glove on the knob, trying the old brass key. Timestamp clear as confession, deck 5, 2:13 p.m. Tyler leaned forward, jaw clenched. This is crazy. I raised my hand. No, Tyler, this is clarity. I reached into the wine bag marked with his name. The crowd leaned in, expecting a bottle. I pulled out a single page, The bank freeze confirmation dated December 12th. Ms. Ortega at Speedway signed this herself. Every transfer, every auto-pay, done. You don't control a cent of my money anymore. Emily's eyes glossed, her voice wobbling. Dad, I didn't mean... I cut her off gently. Intent matters less than pattern. You moved money, you drafted intake forms for Maple Court, and you told your husband I'd sign anything. I held up my phone, pressed play. Her voice filled the room. His ER bill from July scared him. He'll sign anything. Gasps rippled across the folding tables. Someone muttered, Lord have mercy. Pastor Jim, calm as ever, said softly, let him finish. I turned to Emily, the weight of every quiet day behind my eyes. You said that in my kitchen while you cooked my dinner and stole my mail. I heard every word. I just wanted to see what you'd do next. Tyler stood, red-faced. You can't. Just sit down, son, Pastor Jim said quietly, with the kind of authority only age can carry. This isn't a fight. It's a reckoning. The crowd had gone utterly silent. The only sound was the clatter of a spoon somewhere near the dessert table. I straightened the stack of papers and laid the last document flat in the center of the table. Letter to Speedway. Credit Union. Notice of fraudulent activity. Dated, signed, mailed 2 days earlier. I already sent this, I said. Every attempt to touch my account after December 12th is a criminal act. Emily's lips trembled. You're recording me? I was listening. There's a difference. Her. Hands covered her face. Tyler muttered something about lawyers. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I looked around the hall. Neighbors, church friends, Kira frozen mid-breath. You can take a man's hearing, his peace, even his trust. But once he gets them back, I said quietly, you don't get a second chance to lie. No one spoke. Pastor Jim cleared his throat. Let's pray over the food, he said finally, voice even, and over the truth that's come out tonight. People ate after that, but nobody tasted much. Emily left early, eyes down, Tyler trailing behind. The ring of her keys jingled once as she passed the door, the same brass key I'd replaced weeks ago. When the hall emptied, Pastor Jim and I packed up the leftovers in silence. You all right, Marty? He asked. Better than I've been in months, I said, folding the documents back into my satchel. He nodded toward the table. You kept your promise. You listened. I smiled faintly, and when I spoke, they heard. As I locked the fellowship hall door behind us, snow began to fall again, thick and quiet, the kind of snow that erases footprints, but not the memory of where they led. December 23rd. The air outside tasted like iron. The morning after the dinner, I woke up to a stillness that didn't feel like peace yet, but it was close. My phone buzzed before sunrise. It was Attorney Quinn Bell. We're moving now, she said. You have the proof? I've got it all. Photos, transfers, receipts, even the recording. Good. We'll file the petition today. By noon, I sat in Quinn's office, papers spread across a mahogany desk that smelled faintly of lemon oil and winter air. She read through every document while her assistant typed notes. We'll open with a petition for a temporary restraining order against unauthorized financial access, she said, and attach an affidavit of breach. You've been methodical, Mr. Hale. Judges love that. Her printer hummed out pages like a slow drumbeat, each sheet a nail in the coffin of their excuses. She had me sign 3 documents, one for the notice of revocation, one for the repayment demand, and one statement verifying my hearing recovery, backed by the audiology. Report dated October 28th. Everything lined up like clockwork. On December 29th, the hearing took place at Marion County Circuit Court, Room 5B. The benches creaked with old varnish, the fluorescent lights buzzing above. Emily and Tyler sat 2 rows ahead, side by side. He wore a suit 1 size too small. She looked pale and hollow-eyed. Mascara smudged like bruises. Judge Dominguez entered stern but not unkind. "We'll hear the matter of Hale versus Sutter," he said, flipping through a thin folder. "Mr. Hale, your counsel?" Quinn rose. "Quinn Bell for the petitioner." "Proceed." Her voice stayed calm, surgical. She presented the bank memos. First, each signed by Ms. Ortega, showing daughter advising customer. Then the CPA reconciliation, the Zillow drafts, and the ring cam still. She even queued up the audio recording, Emily's voice saying, "He'll sign anything." I watched the judge's face stiffen, his pen pausing mid-note. Emily tried to speak, but Quinn cut in gently. "Your Honor, if it please the court, this is not about estrangement. This is about unauthorized control of a pension and real property." My client simply stopped pretending not to hear. A ripple of murmurs filled the courtroom. When my turn came, I stood, hands steady on the table. "Your Honor," I said, "my daughter's not a monster, but she let money speak louder than decency. I just wanted my life back, and my house." The judge nodded once. "I've heard enough." He turned to Emily and Tyler. "You are hereby restrained from accessing or interfering with Mr. Hale's accounts or property. All keys to be surrendered within 72 hours, accounting for the missing funds due within 14 days. His gavel hit the wood with a sharp crack. "And I suggest you both seek counsel, legal and otherwise." Outside, the air felt cleaner, like the city had exhaled. Gwyn walked beside me down the courthouse steps, coat collar up against the wind. "You did this the right way," she said. "No shouting, no revenge for revenge's sake, just boundaries." "Boundaries with receipts," I said, smiling. Week later, a cashier's check for $200 arrived by certified mail, tucked inside a white envelope with shaky handwriting. "We're sorry." Dad. Quinn advised I sign a repayment agreement and add a confidentiality clause, with one exception. I could share the facts with clergy or counsel. I did. Then I walked to St. Luke's and handed half that check, $4,600, to Pastor Jim for the church pantry. "For people who still have something to lose," I told him. "The rest I kept to fix the gutters, the deadbolt, and the front steps. Justice wasn't thunder. It was paperwork, stamped twice and filed neatly under closure." New Year's morning in Indianapolis always starts gray, like the city hasn't decided yet whether it wants to live another year. I brewed coffee and opened the curtains to find the street glazed in ice. The bird bath out front was frozen solid, and for the first time in a long while I could hear the faint crackle of the ice shifting in the wind. That small sound, clean and simple, felt like proof that quiet could exist without fear. I pulled on my flannel and stepped onto the porch. The air stung, but it was honest. For months, every sound had carried deceit. Now, even the squeak of the porch boards felt like truth. I sat down and made a list in my head, like a lineman counting rungs before climbing. 1. Silence can protect you, but it can also trap you. I'd lived in both. 2. Money isn't evil, but it's fluent in temptation. 3. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's credit without limit. Mary used to say, "People only betray you when you stop expecting them to." I'd stopped expecting anything, and Emily filled the void with control. Now the void was mine again, clean and wide as winter sky. Inside, the old brass key lay on the kitchen table, the one I'd replaced. I turned it over in my palm, the scratch across the bow catching the light. It used to mean home. Then it meant theft. Now it was just metal, evidence that access without respect is only intrusion. At noon, my phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "Emily, can we talk?" No punctuation, just 3 words, cold as the driveway outside. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it, but Quinn had told me something after court. Forgiveness isn't the same as permission, so I didn't block her. I forwarded the message to Quinn and asked her to reply on my behalf. Her text went out 5 minutes later. From Quinn, Mr. Hale is open to a conversation after family counseling is in place. Here are 2 licensed referrals, boundaries in plain English. It felt like armor. Later that afternoon, Pastor Jim stopped by with leftover cornbread and a smile that never pressed for details. "Heard you've been busy making angels in the snow," he said. "Something like that," I laughed. "I just buried a key instead." He looked puzzled until I explained how I'd pressed the old brass key into wet cement on my porch step, sealing it there like a fossil, a small burial for a bad chapter. "That's biblical," he said, patting my shoulder. "Bury the tools of sin beneath new ground. Guess I'm finally renovating my life." We sat there a while, 2 old men watching breath turn to clouds. He didn't ask about Emily. I didn't mention the check. Some stories deserve silence, even after the noise ends. That night, I poured myself a single cup of coffee and stared at Mary's photo on the mantel. Her smile was still patient, still knowing. "You'd have liked how it ended," I said out loud. "No shouting, no locks broken, just signatures and scents." The kettle whistled behind me, sharp, alive, and perfectly tuned. I didn't flinch. That sound, what once startled me, now felt like a starting gun. My hearing had returned, yes, but something more important had too. My agency, my right to peace, my say in my own story. And maybe that was the real revenge, not punishment, not humiliation, but standing firm enough that no one ever mistook my silence for weakness again. By mid-January, Indianapolis thawed just enough to remind me that winter always blinks first. The icicles along the gutter were shrinking, dripping like slow applause. I'd survived the noise, the trial, and the silence that came after. What remained was the rebuild. Devin emailed first. "No." Subject line, just the message. "All traces of Hale Homes LLC deleted. Zillow drafts gone. Account inactive since Deck 30. Attached were screenshots for proof, even fraud leaves footprints, and now those too had melted away." Sandra called next, cheerful as ever. "You're solvent, Marty. Budget balanced. Pension steady. I'd call that a quiet miracle." She sent over a spreadsheet colored green for positive balances and blue for future projections. Numbers, once weaponized against me, were back in my hands where they belonged. I switched every bill to paper mail, electric, water, insurance, just so I could hold each page, feel its edges, smell the ink. There's comfort in paper. It listens, without judgment. The roofing contractor called too, the same man who'd left that confused voicemail weeks earlier. "Mr. Hale, ready to move forward?" "Yes," I said. "March 3rd, let's start fresh." He chuckled. "Good date. Lucky number. I signed the new estimate, $17.50, half due on delivery, and mailed the check myself. Attorney Bell filed a final notice with the court to dismiss the temporary order, since Emily and Tyler had complied in full. "You retained your right to refile," she reminded me, smiling over her glasses. "But I think you've already won." Won. The word didn't sound like victory. It sounded like balance. I decided to donate half of the repaid money, $4,600, to the St. Luke's pantry. Pastor Jim turned it into ham, powdered milk, and warm blankets for the seniors' wing. He sent me a photo, a row of boxes labeled Hale Fund. I printed it and pinned it on my fridge under a magnet shaped like a red apple. Around the same time, Emily and Tyler began couples counseling. Quinn had drafted the boundaries. Any future help from me must be written, witnessed, and capped. No more for now or just until. It felt strange, negotiating terms for love, but I understood. Love without terms had nearly cost me everything. On January 28th, we met at Holiday Park, her suggestion. Snow still hugged the edges of the benches, melting into dark wood. She arrived bundled in a tan coat, eyes red from cold or crying, I couldn't tell. "Dad," she started, voice cracking. "I was scared. About money, about you living alone. It got away from me." I nodded. "Fear's not an excuse, Emily. It's a reason to ask for help, not take it. She nodded, trembling. You really didn't hear me all those months. I heard what I wanted to, I said softly. But the day my hearing came back, I started listening to the wrong things. On purpose, a tear slipped down her cheek. Do you hate me? No, I said and meant it. I just don't owe you silence anymore. We sat like that for a while, birds pecking at snow. When she finally reached out, I let her hand rest on mine for a few seconds before pulling away. You don't have to like my boundaries, I told her, but you will respect them. The best wind carried our breath like white flags across the frozen pond. As I walked back to my car, I thought of Mary again, her favorite saying, "Peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from fences." This time, every fence I built stood tall, sturdy, and lawful, and the gate, though unlocked, was mine alone to open. February came soft and strange, the kind of month that doesn't know if it wants to be winter or mercy. The streets thawed, gutters gurgled, and for the first time in a long while, I slept through the night without checking my locks. The ring cam still blinked blue at the door, but now it was more guardian than guard. One morning I found a small white envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just neat handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a postcard from Maple Court Assisted Living, the very place my daughter and son-in-law once planned to park. Me like a dusty car. On the back, a note written in looping cursive. Mr. Hale, we'd love for you to join our Tuesday game night as a volunteer reader. Pastor Jim recommended you. The residents adore your voice. I laughed out loud, right? There on the porch, the irony hit like sunlight off snow. The place they'd wanted to lock me in was now asking for my company, my voice of all things. That Tuesday I went, walked in through those automatic doors under a plastic garland of hearts. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and oatmeal cookies. A nurse recognized me from church and guided me to the recreation hall. You just read whatever you like, she said. So I did. I opened an old paperback of short stories Mary used to love and began, "The trouble with silence is, it makes liars comfortable." They laughed, really laughed, and the sound filled the room like warm soup. I could hear every shuffle, every chuckle, every cough. When the oven timer in their little kitchen dinged, I paused and smiled. "Dinner's ready," I said, "but let me finish this thought." An old man in the back shouted, "Go on, Marty!" I read the last line, closed the book, and for once the applause didn't embarrass me. The coordinator asked if I'd come back next week. "Sure," I said, "as long as nobody tries to sell my house while I'm here." The room erupted in laughter. Even the nurse doubled over, hand to her chest. Driving home, I rolled down the window despite the chill. The wind roared in my ears, alive and merciful. Every sound, passing cars, church bells, the squeak of my old steering wheel, felt like a promise renewed. When I pulled into the driveway, I looked at my bungalow, the same little yellow house that had almost become someone else's payday. The porch light glowed steady. The cement step still bore the faint outline of my palm, and the brass key buried beneath. I climbed the stairs slowly, breathing in the familiar creak of the boards. Inside, the kettle began to whistle. That whistle, once sharp enough to startle, me now felt like the heartbeat of the house. I poured a cup of coffee, sat in my old chair, and opened my notebook one last time. On the final page, I wrote in slow, careful pen strokes, "Hearing restored, October 28, 2025. Trust revoked December 22nd. Justice served December 29th. Peace reclaimed, ongoing." Then, under it, one simple line, the kind Mary would have approved. Of "You didn't lose me, you tried to spend me." I kept the receipt. I closed the notebook, let the pen rest, and listened to the faint hum of the fridge, the whistle fading, the world alive with sound again. For the first time in a long time, I didn't just hear everything, I understood it. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening at night, set your thermostat the way you like it. No one else gets a vote.